This is Ari Sussman, whiskey maker with Whiskey Gypsy, and you are listening to the Final Third podcast.
Coming to you from the award-winning Final Third Cigar and Whiskey Lounge, PCA's 2024 Best of Leaf Midwest Cigar Bar, Indiana's exclusive Aladino Cigar Lounge. It's the Final Third podcast.
Welcome back to the Final Third podcast. I'm Rob.
I'm Scott.
And I am Mike.
We're already fucking around today. It's early and we are going at it. Man.
Yeah, and just to keep this on record, Mike kissed my Blarney Stones.
You fucking Irish.
If you present them, show me your stones.
Show me your stones.
And we have not even started drinking yet.
That's the next tattoo idea.
Show me your
stones.
It's got to be on your forehead, though, just like a hard, really bold, like Scotty D's bold, like 100 point.
Just do. Well, that's what we need to do is when we go down to Orange Beach, when he goes to sleep, laying on the beach, we just need to get some sunscreen out and write words on his back.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so let's.
You got to draw dicks. That's always
drinking.
the classic.
It's
right?
a classic,
I mean,
yeah.
Has to, yes.
So we're going to be drinking on, starting out now. We're going to be getting on a call here in a few minutes as well. Mike will talk about that. This is the Barrel Finish Reserve Sweet Mash Rye from Hard Truth, finished in cognac barrels. I am so excited about this. So I think this might be one of the ones that Dirk and I tried on his pick. So I have not tried this one yet, but I love the cognac finish.
Okay, I've already figured out this whole head-on mic position thing is really going to fuck up my cigar smoking.
Yeah.
Kind of hit.
Well, if you notice, I always like.
You hug yours?
I don't know. It just feels nice.
No. It's like a small girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
Brothers won't shake hands. Brothers got to hug.
My wife's real mean to me, so like sometimes I just need to.
Need some loving.
Yeah.
I got you.
Just need some love.
So we are also going to be smoking first cigar here, the new Las Calaveras. This thing, I don't have the breakdown of it right now off the top of my head. We will do this one again, I'm sure, here in another week or so. But we're going to be smoking that because I'm pretty sure it's going to go great with bourbon. I've already smoked one. Scott smoked one.
I smoked
really
one,
good.
and I am super, super happy with it. It's one of those things I mentioned. Anytime it's a crown head, for me, I mean, I smoke plenty, but still the nicotine will get to me, right? It'll get to me every now and then, and I know there's lots of other people that typically smoke milder cigars and don't, have that, and then suddenly they go and try a big one, and it's like, ooh, shit, that gets to you.
Yeah.
So this one actually does not. I really like it for that specific reason. The nicotine hit is pretty mild at the end.
Yeah, I haven't tried one yet. You guys have, so I'm left out. We're getting ready to. This one is a Nicaraguan wrapper is Maduro and Ecuadorian Habano. The binder and filler are Nicaraguan.
Cool. Okay.
Made it to my father's.
Which I think all the Las Calaveras are.
Yeah.
So we have heard you guys. I know we've had a few people ask and saying, hey, can you guys do a little bit more detailed cigar content?
Thanks,
yes,
Gene.
That is coming. We're going to be doing more of that. Today is another whiskey episode, but we will be talking about cigars coming up, and we're going to get into some detailed stuff hopefully here in the next month. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening, but we are going to get back to some of that more here
and
soon.
We will try to circle back around a little bit more often.
Yeah.
As we're smoking. We talked about this in one of the challenges because we don't do a review show. That's not what this is. This is us getting together and having a good time and sharing what, really smoking and drinking is all about and the culture and everything. We talk about that a lot, but you can't smoke a bunch of cigars like you can drink a bunch of different bourbons in a 2-hour show. So we'll try to make sure we've put that focus back into the cigars and what's going on as we're smoking them and having them obviously paired with different bourbons.
And I'm pretty sure none of us turned the fans on. So
Oh man, no fans is going to be a problem.
None of us turned the fans on.
I'm not even sure I know where the switch is, so that's as the smoke just floats around us.
Yeah,
which
so
it usually doesn't do.
Today is a whiskey episode, as Scott mentioned. I
think Rob was the one that mentioned, but
who did?
I think Rob said it was a whiskey.
Is that not what I said?
No, Rob, you said Scott.
Oh, well, fuck it, whatever. I'm so discombobulated.
I told you we are. Look, I wasn't even supposed to be here today.
That
so
you're
I don't
fucking
know.
me up.
I know I am. I threw off the whole
presence.
show because I was supposed to be on a plane for work, and then I get a call. I'm 25 minutes from the airport, and then my coworker calls and says, "Don't get on the plane." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
There's snakes.
Yeah, there's snakes on this plane. No, but that's why I'm here. So I'm sorry to throw a wrench in.
I wouldn't even have been mad either. I would have just been like, all right, fucking bye. See you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bye.
No, it was fine. Nope.
Anyways.
Yeah. Anyway,
This is a
show.
whiskey episode.
Whiskey show.
We are going to be joined hopefully soon by Ari Sussman with Whiskey Jypsi. And Will is in Los Angeles currently, so he should be hopping on too. I think I gave him the link. If not
my favorite town.
I fucking hate that place.
So far, I've heard everyone hates that place.
Yeah.
Hate it.
If you live there, you like it, but everybody is on an agenda and fake. I've met executives of companies out there that were like, well, we have to be done by 5 because I've got a reading tonight. I'm like, you're an executive of a company and you still want to be a fucking movie star? Okay. Well, I guess that's LA.
Good for you. Yep. I don't want to live there.
Fucking hate that place.
I don't want to have to make $400,000 to have the same kind of living I have here.
I don't want to go 10 miles an hour
Dodgers.
everywhere. It does not matter.
Dude.
Side streets, interstates is 10 miles an hour everywhere that you go.
So you had a different experience than I did because everyone was going 90 mile an hour even on in-town streets.
I believe that too.
Even
it's
with
one of
traffic.
two. You're either 10 or 90, right?
Yeah.
That's because you're going 10 most of the time. You go 90 when you can.
That is probably true. Yes.
I was going to say the aroma on this, beautiful. Absolutely
Yeah.
lovely.
You haven't tried this one yet, have you?
Unless this is the one we tried in the barrel with Dirk, no. I haven't cracked it. I just cracked it with you guys.
Oh, yeah. That cognac, you said it was a cognac finish, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It is prominent, probably one of the most prominent cognac finishes I've ever had.
Hey,
Boy,
look,
and it really
Will's
cuts
here.
the rye down.
He hasn't joined audio yet.
We'll test him up and make sure it all works.
Yeah, I
Definitely
found a
very
really
honest.
cool. So I'm here in Los Angeles. Yeah, I've been here since Saturday at a national conference for physics nerds. But I found a great little cigar bar in Los Angeles at a bourbon bar essentially, and they have a second bar that's a speakeasy. You kind of got to know somebody to get in, but a guy who was a regular there invited me to come hang with him. So I hung out with him. He's a crypto guy. He does a lot of crypto dealing. And then I hung out with the Republican party leader for Orange County. So the three of us sat around in this little speakeasy, had some Russell's 15, had a couple of Cubans. And
Nice.
That's cool.
So the head of the Republican Party for Orange County, California. So does that mean he's the head of like 6 people? Because, there's not a whole lot of Republicans out there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's about 5. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
So is there a way to fix the delay?
No, it's just
No.
internet.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
We'll see how Ari's is when he joins in, but
So
it's
Will-
probably just internet.
Well, we're smoking the new Las Calaveras that Rob just got in the shop here. Have you
Oh,
had the
cool.
chance to smoke that yet?
No. I know. What was it, Rob? The last podcast we had, we were smoking the old one, right?
Yeah,
Or-
23.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've not had the new one yet. I look forward to trying it for sure.
Yeah,
It's
actually,
starting off great.
it is absolutely starting off fantastic. Mine got a little off on the burn, but that's because I'm using the soft flame today. I can only use it in the lounge because
Oh yeah.
using it outside is impossible. But especially with this bourbon, this is great. Like, it's a really, really nice flavor.
I'm getting more coffee notes off the cigar right now than I remember last time, but I'm also on a fresh palate. So
Yep. Yeah, that always makes a difference.
It's a good thing to do. Looks like we got Ari joining us here.
all right.
We'll give him a minute to.
Hey, hopefully you can hear me.
I can
We
hear
can
you.
hear
You
you.
can see me. Hey,
Hey,
There
how are
he
you?
is.
Cheers, Ari. Can we hear him? Can he hear us?
I can see him.
Can you hear us, Ari?
I can hear you.
Okay, cool.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Yep, we're good now.
Now that we've all solved the Verizon commercial issue, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? Good. All right, cool.
Yes.
Well, heck yeah.
All right, now we're back.
Yeah, now we're here.
All right,
Look,
cool.
last week the power went out like during the recording. It just all of a sudden started storming and then the power went out and I ended up losing like 40 minutes of footage because the board just like died. So that was fun. Had to figure that out.
I don't think it's going to storm today, though. So we're
Shut your mouth.
Shit,
Not
you're right.
supposed to.
God damn it, I just jinxed us.
All right.
Good job.
Well, we have Ari Sussman with us. I hope I said that right. From Whiskey Jypsi. So welcome. Thank you for joining us via Zoom. I know it's not as good as being in person, but thanks for taking the time and joining us.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me and having us. And yeah, I agree. I wish I were there with you in person, pulling on one of those cigars, but Zoom is the next best thing.
Yeah,
for sure. So tell us a little bit about what we have today, because I have the Explorer and then the Legacy. So can you tell us a little bit about, start us off with who you are, and then let's get into the whiskey a little bit.
Absolutely. And let me just check, which Legacy batch do you have? You have to look on the back of the
002
back label. Perfect.
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit about myself, and then just a little bit, and then get into the whiskey, which is really the star of the show.
Sure.
So I am. My name's Ari. I'm originally from Michigan. I had after college, I had a job at the state capitol that I didn't really enjoy. It turns out I thought I wanted to do something, but figured out pretty early that I didn't actually want to do it. And so I quit that job and moved to France and became a winemaker, which was something that I had always had a passion for. And because I didn't really have any responsibilities, family, mortgage at the time, I figured it was a good time to go and at least explore some passions. While I was in France learning about wine production, really fell in love with every part of it, from the finished product, of course, but also everything that goes into it, from the hard work, the early mornings, the working in fields, the crush, the preparing of the winery. And I really fell in love with beverage alcohol production, to put it, in plain terms. When I came back to the States, I really wanted to make more wine and also experiment with other beverages. There was, in France at the winery, there was also an old alembic pot still that they used once or twice a year to make brandy. And I got to witness that. And it's like in the back of a dark room, and everything about it seemed mysterious and awesome. So that was always in my head. When I came back to the States, I wanted to learn a little bit more about wine making and spirit production. And it turns out that there was really only one place in the United States, this is back 15 plus years ago, there's only one place in the United States you could really go and learn deeply about spirits production. Happened to be Michigan State University, where an individual, the late, great Dr. Chris Berglund, founded the first distilling program in the United States. And there was a long time when if you were from Kentucky and wanted to learn how to make bourbon, or from anywhere else in the country, if you're a craft distillery starting a small operation, or if you were a farmer that wanted to figure out another revenue stream for your family farm, you would have to come to East Lansing to learn how to make whiskey or vodka, or brandy or gin or liqueurs or any of the spirits. And so I was in a really fortuitous position where I met Dr. Berglund. He ended up hiring me to manage the distillery at Michigan State. And over the course of about half a decade, we developed dozens and dozens, actually hundreds, about 150 commercially available products. And so that's how I entered the spirits industry, was by partnering with the professor, sort of the godfather of the craft distilling. After a little while, the trustees at Michigan State University decided that they wanted to remove the stills. They didn't want the university to be involved in alcohol production in that kind of way. So at that point, frankly, there were a lot of distilleries who we were working with at Michigan State who sort of had the rug pulled out of them from underneath them. And I started a consulting company. and continued the work that we did at the Artisan Distilling Program at Michigan State, but helped a number of fine folks start their distilling operations. And during that time, field pretty regular phone calls from folks entrepreneurs or enthusiasts who were looking to start their own whiskey company and needed help on or consultation, primarily on the production side. And going back 3 years, one of these phone calls came in out of the blue, and it was a gentleman named Raj Alva, who also happened to be from Michigan. He went to the University of Michigan, like you. He's from Saginaw, Michigan, and he had an idea to start a whiskey company that would approach whiskey making. His vision was to approach whiskey making in innovative ways, in unique ways. And that led to a number of conversations with Raj, and then later he brought in his partner on this project, the great musician Eric Church, who I was surprised at the time to learn wasn't a celebrity endorser. I had dealt with companies where there was maybe a celebrity who comes in and throws their name on the bottle and takes a couple points of equity and a kickback on per bottle sold. But Raj and Eric were very clear that Whiskey Jypsi was not like that, that actually Raj and Eric are partners. Together, they put in the money and the vision, built a team. And I thought to myself, this is not your typical sort of celebrity endorsed whiskey. This is a celebrity and a businessman pulling together their skills and resources to take on the risk of beginning a company. And to me, that's a great foundation for creating an innovative company, because that platform in and of itself breaks the mold to what a typical business model would be when a celebrity is involved. So that's a little bit about my background and how I came to Whiskey Jypsi.
That's awesome, man.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we were lucky enough to get a couple of these. We got a small sample of the Legacy, and then we got a bottle of the Explorer. So I think we're going to go ahead and start with the Explorer and kind of sample through that. So Rob, start us off. Let's go around a little bit with the Explorer. So
while you're while you're pouring that and looking at the details and everything, I had a quick question. Just the end of the program there at Michigan State. I mean, obviously that was probably a bit of a rough time, just kind of a end of an era. I don't know how that would impact you.
Well, what I should say, it was a transition. So what the trustees of Michigan State decided to do was essentially remove production scale stills from the program. The program as an educational, it's an educational area of specialty. It's like a minor. It's between multiple programs. It's chemical engineering and food science that exists as a series of courses, and hundreds of Michigan State University students go through the process of learning how to make wine, beer, and spirits, and do it on a very small scientific scale. But the era that ended was the era of essentially Michigan State University students producing small batches and doing major project development, product and process development.
So being able to expand to potentially a larger business scale versus just the science of it is kind of what was eliminated.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that too was also taking a little liability off of the university by actually making spirits for other people. I'm sure there had to be something there too, probably.
Yeah. A wise man hears one word but understands two.
Yeah.
And I think you're right.
Yep.
I think that they're obviously, they were responding to various pressures. However, at the end of the day, it sort of served its function for a good long while, and then best practices were extracted from that experience.
Yeah.
I was able, and some other folks as well, were able to launch successful consulting companies. So it went from being an incubator of brands to almost an incubator of consultants, which is in many cases just as valuable.
So there
Sure.
are
Yeah,
there resources.
question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. So when you were at Michigan State and you were doing all this essentially contract work for all these brands, were you limited on grains? Like, did you have a limited supply of like what grains you could use coming into Michigan State, or were you sourcing from all over the U.S.? Like, what'd that look like?
So you just opened a can of worms. Just see a wonderful can of what's a can of worms sounds bad. What's a good version of a can of worms? A candy closet?
Candy,
Candy
Closet full of
closet.
So, and we'll talk about this in a little while because you have two of our three expressions. We actually haven't released a whole products family yet. It's going to get into talking about
I
grain
saw that.
and it comes out of some of the initial research that was conducted at Michigan State even a decade or 2 decades ago on the effects of using really high quality, sometimes lower yielding, but higher quality grains in whiskey production. One of the takeaways from the craft distilling movement to me was at the beginning of the craft distilling movement, let's call it 2 decades ago, at the very sort of ascendance of it, even 10 years ago, the great majority of whiskey in the country was produced by a handful, like literally two handfuls, I should say, of distilleries who were making phenomenal whiskey, but there wasn't a whole lot of options in terms of styles. Even certified bourbon stewards would have difficulty tasting a whiskey and telling you where it was from. This is very different than issues that people have in wine. Oftentimes, a sommelier can tell you exactly who made a wine, or a beer cicerone can taste a beer and tell you a lot about it, including its style, how it was probably made, where it may have been made. That was really not the case for the most part in the American whiskey industry, where the great majority of products were highly undifferentiated. And so one of the things that craft distillers from the outset experimented with was taking a more culinary approach to whiskey making, where instead of perhaps using yellow dent number 2 corn as the primary input, and yellow dent number 2 is a modern marvel. It's one of the reasons why the population of the world doubled and then doubled again in the 20th century, because yellow dent number 2 can provide so much sustenance to so many people. The issue with it is it might not be the most flavorful ingredient with which to make whiskey. Yeah. So one thing that craft distillers tried to do from a very early point was to identify, like a chef would, that an heirloom tomato probably tastes better in a salad than a greenhouse grown tomato that was produced off season. Or if that's taking the analogy too far, that there were that making wine from Cabernet generally tastes better than wine made from Concord, and that different varietals of grapes produce different qualities of wine. That thought process applied to whiskey opens an entire way of thought and really decades worth of development work into what are the effects of grain selection into making new and compelling whiskeys. It's a question that we're answering to this day. I should even mention that Monday morning, I had a Zoom with Michigan State University's chemical engineering and food science departments, where we tasted through corn whiskeys, 10 different corn whiskeys. They were all aged 2 years. And each one was made with a different variety of corn here in Michigan. And there were substantial differences in terms of aromatics, mouthfeel, flavor, and finish between the 10 different varietals. And when I have the opportunity of this came on the heels of an even more robust rye varietal trial that was published at Michigan State 2 years ago, where we grew 24 varietals of rye and then made spirits out of them and evaluated them for character. I think the idea of grain, and that just like we would expect the chef to use really phenomenal ingredients, we wouldn't expect the chef to buy. We wouldn't go to a nice restaurant and assume that the accountant made the procurement decisions for the chef.
Yeah.
If you get what I'm saying.
Yep.
And so you have two of our three product families in front of you, the Explorer and the Legacy. And in the coming months, we're going to release another one, which talks a little bit about what we at Whiskey Jypsi, how we're looking at grain differently, as far as everyday drinkers go.
Sweet.
This is so exciting. Yeah. Like I love this. We've started trying to kind of push a narrative on our podcast. Lots of people use the term grain forward, and what they're really saying is immature, right? It's a young. It's just not fully reached where its potential could go, because we're finding more and more whiskeys out there, especially those that are whatever you want to call it, the seed to spirit, the soil to spirit, that mentality or that process where the grain really shines in a beautiful and unique way. And so to call something grain forward and have a negative connotation around it has really kind of put into our minds, hey, that's not the case.
Right.
We should be able to differentiate between these grains. We're not trying to go for, the same general style that for all the, 60, 70, 80 years past Prohibition, everybody that was left seemed to be driving towards. And now we're doing this kind of more, culinary mentality. I like the way that you put that. I like that wording around these grains and getting these unique flavors and things that are different. And it's been a lot of fun over the last 6 months for us to explore that on the podcast and see what people like yourself and others are doing with this.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback a little bit on what you just said, as far as grain forward goes, I come, as I said, from a winemaking background, and a lot of my whiskey making ideas come from a winemaker's perspective. How would a winemaker approach this particular whiskey project? And again, just like winemakers have the option of growing different varietals in the same soil, and they know that it will produce different characteristics. Same with whiskey makers. And the idea, oftentimes in wine, what we as what my winemakers had on, what winemakers often try to do is find the best expression of the fruit. That's why they like to make fruit forward wines, where the wood plays a supportive role, plays a structural role, can give structure and shape to a wine, but really the fruit, the ingredient, is the star of the show. That's also oftentimes the case in European whiskeys, particularly whiskeys that are aged in used cooperage, where there's a number of really fantastic, relatively new distilleries that are making fully mature whiskeys aged in used cooperage, but being varietal specific in Ireland and Denmark, and certainly in Scotland. There's the styles of whiskey there stress a balance between the grain and the wood in a way that we're not really able to achieve in the United States, because the Code of Federal Regulations is very specific about what sorts of wood we need to use and how long it needs to be aged. And New American oak is a fantastic ingredient. It's also a highly active vessel and is going to limit a whiskey maker's ability to express grain forward flavor, because a charred American oak barrel will impart so much character, again, aroma, mouthfeel, flavor, finish, taste to a whiskey that it's in a sense a limitation. Not that a limitation is a bad thing. We'll talk about in some of these other product families how we put limitations on our creativity in order to go deep into it. But we're arriving at an age where grain forward should mean fully mature whiskey, in which the agricultural choices of the whiskey maker are as important as the cooperage choices.
Exactly. Yes, that is critical. Yeah. Go ahead, Will.
No, I just said that's you said it perfectly. I couldn't have stated that better. I think that's how we feel, It's a great way to look at it for sure.
Yeah, it's got I like the limitation note that you put in there, because I don't view it as a limitation. I feel like it's not that it's a limitation, it's just a definition of the style, right? And so, we've got this idea that there is American white oak and American grain and American weather impacting this product. And so it makes it uniquely American, something that it can be reproduced elsewhere, of course, an American style whiskey, but it is something by definition that is part of our history, part of our heritage. to create that spirit, and to then see. I talked about this. I just was at a cousin of mine. He had a Scotch and cigar party, right? And he used to be 100% Scotch guy, and now he's becoming 100% bourbon guy, which is really, really funny. But we all say the difference between Scotch and bourbon. Scotch can be, man, it could be miles apart from one to the next, versus a bourbon that is going to have some level of consistency to it from one product to the next, regardless of the grain, regardless of the barrel, regardless of all that stuff. So I do like that it works that way, that it is constrained in some respects.
And this is just a personal preference. Scotland, one of the ways I became a whiskey blender was by actually when I used to manage bars for a little while. And this is a 50 milliliter graduated cylinder. I don't know if you guys have 50 milliliter graduated cylinders. If you don't, I would love to personally send you some, because this is like the most fun thing I have on my back bar. And I got into 50 milliliter graduated cylinders when I was a bartender, and I would, as for happy hour, allow our happy hour special was folks for $10 could come in and blend their own whiskey. A dram, 50 mLs of it. And what I discovered is exactly what you just mentioned, which is Scotland, a very small geographic area, has a massive spectrum of characteristics available in its whiskeys, from smoky and oily to ethereal and lighter and honeyed and everything in between. And that's because they use different grains and different stills and different fermentation techniques. And they make a number of choices along the way in order to be highly differentiated. And the trend in America for 70 years was against differentiation, was towards homogenization. Everyone was using the same stills. Everyone was using roughly the same yeast strain. Everyone was using the same grain varietals. Frankly, a lot of the big companies were trading barrels one between the next. So if you bought a bottle from a large distillery, it was unclear at best whether that product was 100% from that distiller, or it could have been from their competitor down the street. They were making a fairly indistinguishable product. And again, I think we're veering away from that. We're entering this age where there needs to be a lot of differentiation in order to capture the enthusiasm of the whiskey market. So I don't know if there's ever really been a better time, in my opinion, than right now to be a whiskey maker trying to push the creative boundaries, because there's a lot of great whiskey out there that's available for blending. There's an openness on the consumer to try new things. It's just a phenomenal time to be a whiskey enthusiast.
Yeah,
because the amount of products coming to market, there's a lot of signal, right? There's a lot of noise, but there's also some things that are really, I think, really fantastic.
Well, I mean, look, I started drinking when I was 21, of course. Maybe
21 only.
21 minus 6. It was Jim Beam. It was Jim Beam White Label, right? And that was a long time ago, right? That was mid-90s. And they're just, even though there was some variable products out there, some of the, B-Tac still was in existence then and things like that. But again, they were all kind of going after who can make the best version of this exact thing, right? And now everybody's gone, forget about it. We're not gonna restrain ourselves. We're not gonna limit ourselves to that. And that's why we constantly encourage people. Okay, it's nice to go out and, I guess, if you win a raffle and you get to buy a special bottle that everybody recognizes that has, that name recognition, that's great. But don't go, paying buku bucks. Go explore.
Right.
Go find what's new out there.
Explore.
Yeah.
Go explore, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is that what we're drinking? Is the
Explorer
series?
Yeah.
So let's get into this a little bit, because this is good. I mean, I thought I had maybe something stuck in the back of my mouth or whatever, and so I cleansed my palate with water after trying the first sip.
Just as good.
No, there is a maple that hits the back corners of my tongue that is just kind of a maple honey blend that is absolutely wonderful. I mean,
So
this is
almost
good
like
stuff.
a deep, rich caramel. You get that kind of candied almond thing going in there too, which is nice. A lot of the traditional bourbon notes that I love, but they all come together in this one pour, which is really nice.
Yeah.
And it's light. It's nice and light on the palate, but it does remind me of something that could be a palate cleanser.
Did you look at the
especially
proof?
with a cigar? I did not.
Okay. It is 103 proof.
Yeah, 103.
And that's crazy because I mean it does not come across as, which honestly we're proof whores. We like everything high proof.
Yeah,
103 is actually in our the lower end of our wheelhouse anyway. But the flavor on this is absolutely perfect.
Enjoy live harness racing action at Harrah's Hoosier Park, Tuesday through Saturday through November 30th. First post on weeknights is 6:15 p.m. and 7 p.m. on Saturdays. Also enjoy the Hop Bebop concert series to go along with racing on Saturdays with local musical acts live from the Hop Outdoor Recreational Area from 7 to 10 p.m. Admission is free. Harrah's Hoosier Park, premier gaming in the heart of the Midwest.
I think the flavor is just outstanding. I was honestly quite surprised at how come it's very well rounded. I get a lot of different notes, but they all come together and kind of married perfectly. And I just agree. It doesn't. I mean, I don't think it's drinking actually to proof, but to me it just tastes great. Great flavor, great mouthfeel.
Yep,
mouthfeel.
Definitely a mouthfeel.
So I like this one too because like it tells you everything you need to know, right? Like it's 6 years. On the back, it has the mash, 66 corn, 30 rye, 4% malted barley. It's even got a flavor profile breakdown.
Nice.
So you got, your top 8 flavor notes right there, and it has a profile of low, medium, and high. Like that's pretty cool. You don't see that on a lot of bottles. Everyone else is like, oh, it tastes like oak.
Well, and it does tell me that you're trying to do something a little different. Yeah, you're trying to create a great whiskey, a great product, but you're also trying to educate the consumer. And there's something key to educating consumers. I mean, we all know, most people that get into bourbon, they get into bourbon, and they want to learn and learn and learn. And this is a great way to learn about that and taste those different grains. But then like Will was saying, or one of you guys were saying about all the flavors are marrying nicely, but you can still pull out each note, which is kind of cool. I like the way that works. And that kind of comes probably from that wine world. You want to be able to taste them, but you also want everything to marry together to something special once they blend together.
Yeah, there are a couple of wine influence in this whiskey. In fact, if you look on the back of the neck label, you can. The front of the label says straight bourbon whiskey finished with French and Appalachian oak staves. So French and American oak, right? That's what the front of the label says. But if you look at the back of the neck label, it gets even more specific. In the verbiage on the back label. Again, we talked about how can companies innovate in the current market.
Yeah.
One of the ways in which we brands innovate is by secondary wood finishing. It's a very prominent trend in the Explorer family of products, of which this is the first release. We're working on several others right now, which will be released in sequence in the coming months and years. We were really looking in the Explorer series at the trend of wood finishing and sort of the higher end of wood finishing bourbons. It seemed to me like when I would go to a liquor store, there was really great whiskey being finished in port barrels, sherry barrels, a handful of barrels that may or may not have had a story behind them. It was kind of like we had this whiskey, it was good whiskey, we put it in this barrel, it was a good barrel, and that's the end of it. There's not really necessarily a reason for it to exist. So at the very beginning of Whiskey Jypsi as a brand, Eric's a songwriter. He's an artist. He's trying to express something. And Raj is a very, very bright businessman. He understands that for a brand to be successful in this ultra competitive market, it has to stand for something. It has to have a perspective. And Whiskey Jypsi has a perspective. As a brand, it is about going out and exploring the world. The brand was, in a sense, conceived of during lockdown. And we were all locked down and our minds were traveling all over the world. I was watching a lot of documentaries. I'd done a lot of traveling early in life. Raj and Eric are also avid travelers. And we sort of conceived of Explorer as a whiskey enthusiast tour of the world. So rather than get whiskey and finish it in wood, we wanted to tell stories about people, cultures, and agricultures that mean something to us as a brand. And so for the very first Explorer, and the Explorer series is going to visit places all over the world and tell stories and how they relate to things that we're interested in or how they relate to the brand in a way that starts with really great whiskey and then top quality wood. And then on top of that has a story that is real and authentic and hopefully interesting and gives a reason for the spirit to exist. The first one was, have you guys ever heard of like the troubadours? Troubadours of the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, the traveling entertainers, right?
Yep.
The traveling entertainers. I don't know if you ever saw Disney's Robin Hood. I watched it a lot when I was a kid, and there's a rooster that's a troubadour. He's kind of like the folk singer.
Yep.
And from earliest talks between Raj and Eric and I, we determined that we were inspired by a number of things, and one of them was sort of the troubadour tradition, the idea that you could interpret the world through art, whether that's poetry or music, that you travel and integrate your experiences with people and cultures into your art. That was a new art form when the troubadours launched it. That there weren't really people doing that before the troubadours came along. And Eric Church, he inherited that tradition. He's a current torchbearer of the troubadour tradition in the modern age. And when he said he was inspired by sort of the troubadour tradition, we essentially started a book club and started learning about troubadours. And it turns out that the troubadour tradition originated in French primarily around an area called the Tronçais Forest. Winemakers know the Tronçais Forest as the source of origin for some of the highest quality wine barrels in the world. Bordeaux, which is a phenomenal, one of the top wine growing regions in the world, gets almost all of its oak from the Tronçais Forest because the oak that's grown in the Tronçais Forest is of that caliber, is of that quality. Barrels from the Tronçais Forest are 4 or 5 times as expensive as top quality American oak barrels. There's no, they're unassailable in terms of their quality. That also happens to be the forest where the troubadours originated. So we thought it would be fun to get some barrels and staves from the Tronçais Forest and use that as part of this expression. Now, the French oak has a lot of spice and structure and depth. And so those are characteristics where if you taste any spice here, that's and maybe a little bit of smoke, that's primarily coming from the Tronçais Forest. And then in the New World, the Appalachian Forest, the Appalachian Mountains, that's sort of the cradle of the troubadour tradition in the New World. So we thought for our very first Explorer, which is sort of an homage to these traveling poets, this is sort of like the first Explorer, which is setting the tone for our future ramblings and explorations. It would be fun to make a whiskey truly inspired by the troubadours by sourcing wood from 2 places in the old world where they originated, in the New World where that torch still burns brightly, and to make a whiskey that's reflective of that. And the American oak, of course, has this great sweetness, vanillin and caramel and butterscotch, all these great attributes that we associate with American oak. As we were doing prototypes and trying to figure out the right balance between French oak and American oak, between Tronçais and Appalachian oak for Explorer 1, it became clear to me that the typical 21% rye or 36% rye bourbons that we were experimenting with weren't the best expression that we could come up with. We ended up actually making a blend of whiskeys of a sort of low rye and a high rye. The low rye to really highlight the sweetness of the American oak, and the higher rye to highlight and emphasize the spiciness of the French oak. So this sort of unique mash bill that we wrote on the back of the label represents a whiskey blend, and we blended the whiskey in order to really highlight the woods that we chose to use. That's how we came up with this blend.
So I'll say that the whiskey with this cigar, we're smoking this Las Calaveras, the 2024 edition, and I think it accentuates that spice element, and especially that French oak so much. I get notes of alternating 70% bitter chocolate when I'm smoking the cigar, and then more like a 45% semi-sweet chocolate when I go back to the bourbon, which is really playing nicely because the bourbon's got a little bit of that sweetness to it, and the cigar's got a little bit of that edgy bitterness to it that you can sometimes get. And the two of them together, I mean, this is, I don't know, Rob, you picked well, because this is a great match between these two.
I mean, it reminds you of almost like a mocha coffee when you put them together.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
nice
the mouthfeel
together,
having just a little bit of that creaminess between the smoke and the bourbon.
Yeah.
I'm always enjoying the combination of a cigar and a bourbon, and they're always different and unique in what you get. And sometimes it does not work at all. And sometimes you're like, man, this creates a spice bomb. This is a very, very well balanced combination.
I think so too.
That we got today.
Yeah, and it's not too spicy even on the retro, because the Ecuadorian Habano is kind of like a milder spice.
Yeah.
So it mixes really well with the
sweetness,
the Explorer sweetness. So it's
Yeah.
pretty good. I'm sad for you, Will, that you can't enjoy this cigar with us.
Well, both of you guys.
Yeah, I was
both of
thinking
you,
definitely a Maduro wrapper to me would be great with this. You know, I guess my question, Ari, is like, so when you're as a blender, a whiskey blender, like to come up with Explorer, like, is that iteration process just exhausting from the standpoint of all the trial and error, all of the stave combinations? I mean, there's all these infinite possibilities always when you're blending. So do you have a base kind of thought in your head of, I want the flavor profile to start here, and then I kind of work from that aspect and build on that, and then putting in your knowledge of stave combinations and what's going to bring it to kind of, you kind of start out with a block of clay, right? You start kind of molding it and shaping it. I mean, that's the way I kind of envision it in my head. It's the same with blending. You've got to start somewhere, but how do you go through that iteration process?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it takes a long time, and it helps to work on multiple sort of prototypes simultaneously. So the process basically is an ongoing process. Everyone in this company we're all not only just passionate about whiskey, we're kind of consumers of information and travel and all kinds of things. So as we read novels or travel magazines, or listen to stories from our friends about places they've been, or visit restaurants that might feature specific types of cuisine from specific regions, we in Whiskey Gypsy are always thinking, would this make a whiskey? Could this make a whiskey? If I go to a wine tasting, I think, how is there a whiskey that can be created using the information garnered at this wine tasting? Or even a beer tasting. So as far as ideas go, we're always thinking of new types of explorers based on places that inspire us, whether that's Japan or South America, Africa, or places that people don't typically look for wood in order to flavor whiskey. We look at all over the places. And we look at different types of spirits and wines and beers and how they're aged, and even sometimes how perfumes are made with resinous woods. And we try to identify if there's whiskeys that are sort of calling to us from those things. That's number one. Number two is it's one thing to, you said there's a lot of variables. And even with a single stave, toasted French oak staves, we still need to understand into what proof are we putting the staves, or are we using barrels to extract? Because whiskey at 125 proof extracts very differently than whiskey 100 proof in the same barrel. It's just a different amount of water. Some compounds are more soluble in water, some are more soluble in ethanol. So the proof of that whiskey is going to greatly influence the characteristic it takes from the barrel. Simultaneously, if you use staves, then you can play around with the dosage rates, essentially the weight of the staves versus the volume of the liquid. And one trick I'll put out there, and I hope that folks that like to experiment with wood and whiskey have a chance to do so, is whiskey around 100 proof generally extracts sweet compounds before tannin. So the first sort of uptake of character will be the sweeter components of the wood, and then the tannin or the structure will sort of scale up. So what's really critical is not just that you put whiskey in wood, set the clock for 6 weeks, and come back. It's a process of making samples that are big enough that you can remove samples daily and evaluate those samples at different dosage rates to understand how much wood to put into what proof alcohol, and then what contact time. Is it 2 weeks? Is it 6 weeks? Is it 6 months? Because the rate of extraction is going to vary dramatically. And so for whiskey makers that are looking to up the level of sweetness, could recommend put in toasted oak at a very high dosage rate for a very short amount of time, because sugar will be the first thing to be extracted into the whiskey. And so for all of the different woods that we have from around the world, and we have many prototypes going simultaneously, those prototypes need to happen in a sizable enough vat that we can pull off samples that we can go back and revisit and share with tasting panels. So there's certainly an investment in the R&D process, and what you taste is sort of the product of that investment.
Yeah, I feel like what you're describing and the whole processes you're talking about, it's the antithesis of the big six, like what we think of what they've done in the past. It's just not what they do, right? I mean, maybe they do have some experimental stuff that they're doing, but there's just, I feel like there's just more attention to detail going on with some of these blending aspects now than maybe some of the other places. So
yeah, so you're going to see explorers coming out that are going to feature areas and cultures that are meaningful to us. Bunch of us like being on boats and sailing around the Caribbean, and I think we're going to play around with some ideas having to do with the flavors of the Caribbean. We're looking at other Eastern European wine producing regions that go back thousands of years in some cases, and helping tell the story of those cultures and agricultures through whiskey as well. Again, whiskey is a means of telling a story.
Yeah.
Right? It has to be good. Like, the whiskey has to be good. But once it's good, can it also express something a little bit more about the people who are making it? Or, can there be more than just good whiskey? It's almost like, imagine a pop song that sounds good but is meaningless, or doesn't have like a multiple layers of meaning. That's great. Everyone wants a song to sound good that they can bob their head to. But if you can put meaningful lyrics to that, and maybe ambiguous lyrics to that you can go back and revisit at different times in your life, then it's just a more meaningful song, piece of art. We try to imbue our whiskeys with sort of layers of meaning and context, because that's our approach to whiskey making, is sort of infused with storytelling and travel.
So I got to say,
awesome.
I got the chance to see Eric perform.
Oh yeah,
I was out at the Iowa Motor Speedway for the Hy-Vee IndyCar weekend, and he was one of the 4 performers out there that put on a show. And I'm not a country guy typically, but I got to say that everybody that was out there that performed, I was super impressed with all of their shows, and Eric for sure did a great job. And definitely you can see the passion, and to hear that the way that you presented, Ari, about, being an explorer and being somebody who travels and, telling a story, but also when you're traveling, you're hearing stories, right? You're communicating and talking to other people and sitting down and hearing their stories as much as you're telling your own. And certainly it opens up the doors to create products when you're thinking about those stories, whether it be music or bourbon, to, that mirror those interactions that you have. So I love hearing you talk about, what this means for you guys at Whiskey Jypsi, and how it relates to your products. And obviously it shows through, because this is excellent whiskey.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you want to move on to the legacy, this is where things go.
Yeah, we're ready.
This is
Okay,
really
we're ready, but
one
Rob's
of the
not
places
ready.
where we
Now
we really-
Rob's ready.
legacy
Sorry,
is really pushing the boundaries. we're really proud of the Legacy series and how sort of weird and wonderful it is. And our Legacy series, we believe, is doing something that, frankly, we'd like to see a little bit more of, which are grain. Well, in this case, they're essentially international cross-category blended whiskeys. I spoke a little bit earlier about being a bartender and letting folks mix up different single malt scotches.
All right, I gotta stop you for a second because I had this trouble when I was trying to pour Will's sample bottle. I couldn't get this little bottle open, and I opened it once and I closed it again. I can't get it open again.
Does it have a black cap?
Yeah, these are intense. All right, I gotta move on.
The black cap. These are the sample bottles that I was mentioning that we pull from as we do Explorer. The black caps, they can be a little tough to open sometimes.
I think we might just have to break
They're
the bottle.
good for mailing because they don't spill.
He got it.
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, you stick them in this awesome book presentation, so you got to make sure it doesn't spill, right?
Yeah, we got the
Yes,
green
right.
Samoan
Do you
over
have
there.
the book?
I do have the book. Yeah, we got the book right here on the table. So
Very,
Did you
very
get the
cool
Explorer book as
presentation.
well?
I did not get the Explorer book.
So just quickly, because I'll show you the Explorer book, which also has the sample, has
Oh man.
staves from each of the pieces of wood.
Oh, that
man,
is
that's so
cool.
cool.
Oh, how do we get one of those?
Appalachian. Well,
Hey, I'm gonna go ahead
let me talk.
crank
to
it.
somebody.
Okay.
Crank it and hand it back to Mike.
Great. All right. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. I'll work through this with my weak wrists.
So earlier I talked about a product family that was going to focus on grain and how using better, more flavorful grains can produce better sort of everyday sippers. Then we talked about Explorer, which is really about taking 6-year-old age statement minimum whiskey and infusing it with wood. And it's our take on the sort of trend of wood finishing. It's our own little way, our style of doing wood finished bourbon. Legacy is totally different. In the Legacy product line, these are different than other spirits that are out there. And we ask folks to approach it with an open mind. It's a little bit more of a European style in terms of the weight of the whiskey. It's generally the Legacy products are sort of medium mouthfeel and have a lot of complexity and benefit from sitting with it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and even sometimes adding a little bit of water, because each of the Legacies are blends of 3 different whiskeys, 3 different types of whiskeys. And Legacy 2, which we call the Alchemist, is a whiskey that, again, we talk about sometimes wines open up in the glass as they oxidize. This is very much a whiskey that opens up in the glass. And the reason for that is pretty simple to tell. This is a whiskey that's a blend of 3 whiskeys that are each aged at least 10 years old from 3 different countries. Okay. So what the whiskey you have in front of you is 60% of the blend is an 11-year-old whiskey from Tennessee, which was aged in what we call rejuvenated barrels. So barrels that had been used once, then scraped and recharred. And what that does is it extracts a lot of sugar, but not so much tannin, because the tannins have already sort of been depleted from the first use in that barrel. That 60% of the blend is coming from Tennessee and is very similar in style to bourbon. 36% of this blend is 18-year-old rye whiskey from Canada. The rye whiskey has been aged in port, vermouth, and sherry barrels. Gives it a little bit of little bit of fruit character, a little bit more depth. But it's what you would expect from a Canadian rye that's aged just about 2 decades. And then one thing that's really interesting about this is 4% of the blend is a 10-year-old single malt from Goa, India. And this 10-year-old single malt is really beautiful. It actually has deep tea and tobacco leaf character. And so what we have in Legacy 2 is sort of reconstructed 36% rye mash bill. If you think about an American bourbon, like a high rye mash bill, it's 60% corn. 36% rye, 4% malted barley. We've actually reconstructed an American style mash bill using 3 whiskeys from around the world. To represent the corn in a high rye mash bill, we used 60% of this is an 11-year-old whiskey from Tennessee that's 84% corn, has a lot of corn character. 36% of this, again, is this 18-year-old rye that has the ethereal and the spice and some of the sweetness that we associate with Canadian rye. And then 4% of the, what we would in high rye mash bill for bourbon, 4% would be malted barley. To represent that, we used a 10-year-old Indian single malt. So this is truly a cross-category international whiskey blend that opens up in the glass, that evolves in the glass. It's in there at a pretty high proof. It's in there at 114 and a half, almost proof, 114.3. If you choose to add a little bit of water, or if you choose to kind of swirl and let it oxidize, you'll see that new flavors and aromas will come out. And this is what happens when you do cross-category blending with mature whiskeys. No two tastes are ever really the same because it's this evolving cauldron of compounds and flavors and aromas in your glass.
See, to me, unpeated single malts always have a bit of a citrusy note, and I really get that in the corners. Just that slight hint of citrus that is really nice in this. I also note the mouthfeel. So I love the mouthfeel on this because, as it's kind of coating your tongue, it's got a soft note to it, but it's not overly soft. Like for me, like a Basil Hayden gets anything from Basil Hayden is always way too soft for me. It doesn't hit my mouthfeel at all. This is a great balance there for that. It's got a nice richness to it that really comes through.
I think what's unique too about this one is the nose is subtle but complex. But then when you get into the flavors, they just pop. It's just like it kind of messes with your brain a little bit because you think usually on a subtle nose, it's going to be more of a subtle whiskey. This one's kind of the opposite.
But swirl it some.
It did change.
Like Ari said, if you swirl it some and you let it aerate just a little bit, that nose really opens up after a minute or two. Because I swirled mine early. Yeah. And it's really, like, I agree with you.
Deep, rich notes,
yeah. Yeah, when it first poured, I did not think that the aroma was, anything aggressive or that there was a lot of high notes of any type in there.
It's a little toothy.
And now it's totally popping.
Let it evolve in this will continue to iterate in the glass. And again, it's because when almost 20-year-old Canadian rye meets 10-year-old Indian single malt meets 11-year-old Tennessee, the first impression, and this is one of the things we're trying to express, allow it to give a first impression. This happens in the wine world all the time. You smell a wine, you put it down, you come back 10 minutes later, you smell it, it's different because reactions have happened. Yeah. And we wanted to sort of bring that approach to a product, a story evolving in your glass to whiskey. I'll also mention that the cork on top it's like a hidden coin. There's a challenge coin, a really high quality challenge coin that comes out. Absolutely beautiful. And if you go to the website, whiskeyjypsy.com, you can see examples of it. Every legacy release has a different coin that we design and produce for it. So you can kind of collect them all, and they're beautiful. And the whole team, Eric and the team, everyone has a say in sort of how that comes together. But it's a very cool sort of collector's item. The bottle itself is pretty awesome. It has a hand-hammered look to it. And the hand-hammered look is something that we have sort of across a lot of our branding. We have flasks on the website that are also hand-hammered copper. Within the spirits world, hand-hammered stills are kind of like a signifier of something being made by a craftsperson. And so we try to highlight that in our bottle design, as well as the website, as well as the flasks and things that we sell.
So now I understand the $199 price tag on the legacy bottles because of the 10, 11, and 18-year products that are blended into it.
Yeah.
So, these are some rare whiskeys.
Yeah, go ahead,
Will
Will.
with the Legacy series, will you typically be seeking international whiskeys all the time with that, or is it going to just vary, or what?
So we talked a little bit about how we do R&D for the Explorer series, which is basically fairly large whiskey that we donate to the cause of learning how to do it. Um, the Legacy series, sort of the creative guidelines that we put on it, were let's try to recreate traditional American mash bills using whiskeys from anywhere.
Okay.
So the very first Legacy that we produced, which was a riff on a 21% rye bourbon mash bill. So it was 70% a 99% corn bourbon. It was 21% 20-year-old Canadian rye. And then it was 9% American single malt. So that whiskey that product had whiskeys from two countries, not three. And the reason for that is we started with essentially the ratios, the 70-21-9 or the 60-36-4. We start with the concept of a mash bill. And then because Eric and Raj have chosen to essentially buy portfolios of whiskey from all over the world, bring them to Nashville, which is our home, it allows myself and the production team to make prototypes at those ratios using different whiskeys from around the world. So for Legacy 2, we tried different corn whiskeys from different countries. We tried different ryes from different countries, and we tried different single malts in blind taste tests. What you're tasting is what the results of blind taste tests. So it's fun. We get to do different iterations of our reconstructed mash bill concept, and then essentially in blind taste tests determine which ones speak to us. And sometimes those whiskeys only come from two countries. Sometimes they come from three countries. And that's part of our process, our creative process of discovering what the whiskey is going to be. We begin in the Legacy that we're going to highlight some mash bill. And then we get to make lots of versions using different whiskeys that we have in our stocks in our library.
My head is just spinning. Like I'm thinking about, as you talk about these blends, I'm like, man, I'd really like to see like I'm thinking of one distillery in Illinois. I'd like to see Whiskey Acres blended with some Taiwanese whiskey, and I think that it like be crazy, like. So I just really think this is a cool concept.
So this is where you come back to the 50 mil graduated cylinder, right? The idea if you're going to have a bunch of, I've got a pretty diverse cabinet. I keep all kinds, single malts and blends and bourbons and ryes, and I've never even thought for even 1 second to blend any of them, right? It's just something that's never occurred to me. Final Third Cigar is Indiana's exclusive Aladino Cigar Lounge. Come to Final Third for a selection of over 20 different Aladino cigars, including the Cameroon, a wonderful cigar with nice light flavors. Make sure and visit Final Third, the Aladino exclusive cigar lounge for Indiana.
So a distiller oftentimes we'll see their job is getting grains together in the proper ratios, conducting a clean fermentation, distilling it properly, and putting it away in the barrels for a set amount of time. And what comes out of those barrels is the finished product. A blender has a very different job and a very different skill set. For blenders that I work with, I don't care if they know anything about fermentation. Just like if I'm working with a distiller, they're generally a trained scientist. I don't care if they can balance flavors. That's not what their job is. So the job of a distiller and the job of a whiskey blender, two vastly different skill sets. They require sort of different approaches, different scientific knowledge, different olfactory and culinary knowledge. So just like when I hire distillers, I look for a scientific background and their ability to identify on the fly challenges going on in the fermentation. Whiskey blenders are very different. I want chefs and I want bartenders and people who understand how balance can be achieved. And generally knowledge of fermentation doesn't give anyone a leg up in figuring that out. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. at Whiskey Gypsy to be able to on one end with the product that's coming out, talk about grain and fermentation conditions and distillation techniques and all of that. With Explorer to talk about different woods from different places. And then Legacy is really about blending. And we've identified cross-category blending in general. Our version is cross-category, sort of international blending. But whiskey blending is a trend that we at Whiskey Gypsy really want to be looking into. And wood finishing, both from an artistic and a scientific point of view, because as we pull these, and I'm surrounded by hundreds of samples of different whiskeys that I get in the mail. We want to make sure that for each of these sorts of trends that are going on right now, these artistic expressions, whether it's agriculture and full flavored grains, wood finishing, or whiskey blending, Whiskey Gypsy is part of that sort of conversation, and trying to be the tip of the spear and try to uncover fun and interesting ways of making whiskey and sharing whiskey.
See, this gives me so much more insight. We went through a sensory training with Jackie Zykan, and yeah, I mean it was incredible, but I never really thought her background, bartender into the whiskey world and doing blending. She didn't really explain it, the way that you have, but it makes a lot more sense now in context of that whole experience that she took us through and what that means to kind of what you're talking about in this blending experience and being able to put things together this way. It's really, really kind of eye-opening. It's going to make me go back to my own personal cabinet now and start playing mad scientist, right?
Yeah.
Well, so here's the rule. First of all, everyone, and again, if you don't have a 50 milliliter graduated cylinder, just let me, I will send you them, or you can go online. They're like $2 on Amazon for a plastic one.
We'll take them with an Explorer book. Yes, send an Explorer book and 2 cylinders.
That's okay. And then make sure you write down the blends that you make, because there is nothing more frustrating than making something beautiful and then forgetting how you made it. So make unique things, write down what you like, and then tweak it.
Yeah.
And 50 mils is great because you can sit there for a night, and if you're going to have 3 or 4, or make a night out of it, have 5 glasses or whatever, you can pour yourself, and you can make it better over time. The other thing you can do is make a couple different blends, share them with your friends, and get a sense from them of what they like, and then go back to the sheet and see what each of them were. And turns out that bourbon makes a really fantastic base, and single malt oftentimes makes a really fantastic top note or aromatic top note. We did talk about winemakers, and we talked about bartenders and scientists, but in many ways, I think one of the places that whiskey makers and whiskey enthusiasts can look into and just study a little bit to help sort of elevate all of our experiences is perfumery. Mm-hmm. Perfumery goes back thousands and thousands of years, and perfumers have developed so many techniques on how to blend different characteristics together. I find that studying perfumery really helps in the whiskey production process.
Do you know of Jackie Zykan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
she's great.
So you know her Ode to Oak scent line? Yeah.
She's got an Ode to Oak scent line. Molly Trope,
crazy.
Who's at, I forget where Molly Trope is.
Yep.
A fantastic whiskey maker who's also involved in perfume.
That's super cool.
There's a guy named Kevin Peterson here in Detroit that wrote a book called The Art of the Cocktail. He's actually a perfumer who came to spirits through perfumery. I see that the sort of growing intersection between aromatics and spirits as a really, really exciting place.
Yeah, different isolates and playing with everything. Like it was a crazy experience to do that sensory training. But yeah, knowing all your different isolates on your perfumes and stuff was it was wild.
So I do want to ask that you said that this that we were just drinking, it was like $200 a bottle retail.
Yeah.
$199.99.
Okay, so normally my focus is going to be the $50 to $80 bottles, right? The things that are really accessible, and it's got to be something pretty special for me to look at a $200 price point, because there's a few out there, but lots of times it's new distilleries that are they've got to recover costs. I understand, right? And they're doing limited releases. It's something you're not going to be able to get anywhere else, but it doesn't necessarily make it worth $200. I do want to compliment you because this, I would pay $200
all day long.
So I honestly am going to go out and try and I'm assuming I can find this somewhere. I can
www.whiskeygypsy.com.
Perfect. Okay, good.
What state are you in?
Indiana.
Yeah, so not yet in conventional distribution in Indiana. We're sort of digging deep in those markets where we have a strong foothold. We generally have a person there, and so all of our products are available online. The website's a really great place to get products. We're fans of direct to consumer. In general, it allows products to reach the right consumer, even if we haven't yet invested in opening up a specific market. We're strategically rolling out our distribution plan. In the meantime, however, all of these products are available on the website, along with videos describing each project. I mean, we get to have a cool conversation for a while. Not everyone gets to have a conversation, but we did make some very high quality videos about each of these products and product lines.
So I'm definitely going to look into this one. And also with the graduated cylinder and making a night of it, I'm thinking I would just set like my phone on a tripod and just record. Because I'm pretty sure the later the night goes, you start becoming mad scientist and trying to figure things out. I better have some way of recording and going back, because if I go back and think the next morning, man, that seventh batch was really awesome.
What was that?
Gotta write down exactly what you put in.
My writing looks a little hazy. Let's go to the video.
I've done that a little bit with Scotch and bourbon. Kind of blending them equally. And you're right though. I think the single malt, the I guess more softness of a single malt compared to the complexities of a bourbon tend to balance it out nice. And I really liked it too, but I've never really actually sat down and played with it with percentages and stuff, other than when Will and I went down to Bourbon 30, and we blended a couple bottles of our own too, and that was probably the closest I've ever been to actually blending, something like this. So definitely something that'd be a lot of fun to play with, and maybe even do a little event here where we actually talk about that a little bit.
Look, I'm thinking we have a Jypsi segment.
I think we should.
Where, maybe once a month we just blend some stuff. And
hey, it's a great idea.
Yeah, I know Will's into it.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
Will loves that. So Ari, I'll tell you this too. You got my contact info. When you're ready to distribute into the state of Indiana, you give me a shout, man. We'll hook you up, because Will's part owner of Indiana Small Batch, and I do their marketing. So we got your distribution in the state of Indiana. We could definitely help you out, brother.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Shameless plug.
Beautiful.
Moving on. Anyways.
Shameless plug. Yeah.
No, that's great. And I think it would be really interesting if you chose, say, a bourbon and a Scotch, and if you had 2 or 3 or 5 people and everyone had their own graduated cylinder and was asked to find their ideal combination between the two. Sometimes it happens at 50-50, but not usually.
Right.
Usually I start with 3, sort of like an 80-20, a 50-50, and a 20-80, right?
Yeah.
So 3 different versions of the blends, and then you can sort of triangulate which one of these is closest to what I'm looking for. And it's fun sometimes to get together with people, or even bring enthusiasts and bartenders together and let 2 or 3 people find the sweet spot, because oftentimes with whiskeys, you'll find a sort of resonant frequency, at least for yourself, where the blend is just kind of at the top of the quality curve. Meaning, it might be 37.2%, one whiskey and the balance being the other. That might be for one person. Someone else might be 16% one whiskey and the balance being the other. But it's fun to allow a number of people to make their own ideal blends and then put it through an impromptu tasting panel and see whose palate most aligns with the group. There's obviously a really interesting thing that happens where when we taste whiskey as a group, oftentimes we come to the same favorite.
Vanilla.
There's a group dynamic sometimes. Sometimes there's not. I like to do tasting panels in groups, and by individuals. And frequently you'll get very different results with the same whiskey, whether you're tasting it with a group where people's opinions can influence each other versus with an individual just by themselves saying, I like this one more than the other two.
So
It's just a fascinating exercise. Groups work together and how we sometimes perceive things differently when we're by ourselves and within a group. And it allows you to find these resonant frequencies between different whiskeys where, somehow it's better at 38% of the blend than it is at 35% of the blend.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that 3% can make that much of a difference.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So I do have a question, just kind of curious. So if someone's traveling down to Nashville or lives in that area, do you guys have events set up at your place where people can come and actually have an experience? Is that something you're looking at doing, or am I just throwing out ideas of shit you guys don't want to get
No,
involved
it's a
with?
great idea. It's something we're thinking about.
Okay.
Certainly thinking about doing, and we're thinking seriously about doing. Right now, the website is the best place to get sort of the full branded experience where we're talking about things. But we're certainly looking into opportunities for more hands-on interaction with the whiskey community.
And that's going to start on August 25th, right? Because we're going to Chattanooga on the 26th, so we just stop in on the 25th and we'll just swing by and hang out.
I don't know if it's going to be open quite then, but if you find yourself heading through Nashville, certainly recommend stopping at Chiefs, which is Eric's new bar on Broadway.
Okay.
Pretty amazing. There's fantastic barbecue, great whiskey selection, if I do say so myself. And you could probably catch some up and coming talent performing there, and the food's really good. He partnered with James Beard barbecue chef named Rodney Scott, who's just masterful. Talk about, we're trying within a whiskey context to figure out the best ways of using aromatic woods, and it's really cool to be able to talk to folks like Rodney Scott, who's a master of barbecue, which is a whole nother sort of school of thought of how to use aromatic woods. And some of the things that he's told me about his experiments with smoke and wood, I think are actually going to come into play with future Whiskey Gypsy releases.
Oh, I can tell you right now, I had never had it before. A buddy of mine over at his house, and he'd had somebody out there doing some work. And the guy said, hey, I got a whole bunch of like old whiskey staves, barrel staves out in my truck. You want them? He's like, yeah, sure. Because he talked about how he smokes meat. And we did steaks just with a few chunks off of, the staves are really hard to cut through.
Oh, yeah, they're super thick.
Yeah, super dense.
Very dense.
Holy shit. Those steaks were unbelievable. Just two little chunks was all it took to get that smoke on a ribeye, and that that ribeye fat just will take that stuff in. It was absolutely incredible. I'm like, this is not. I'd heard of some people doing it, but it's not like a prominent thing. I'm like,
yeah. So Derek, the Deadwood Live, I take his scraps.
Do you?
Yeah. So he makes tables. It's probably hard to see back in the corner over there, but this nice big slab table that he made, Live Edge. He does, bourbon tables and stuff, and I take all his little scrap ends for my smoker, and then I'll just toss a couple chunks on with, pork butt or some steaks, and it's good stuff. We're all smokers. We all have a smoker. Will's good at running his smoker, so he knows what's up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So hey, I have a question. So with the Legacy series, will that come out multiple times a year, once a year? Like, what's that look like for you guys?
Legacy will generally come out once a year.
Okay.
With a sort of push around graduation and Father's Day, and then holidays.
Okay.
And Legacy is, by its nature, very limited in production. It is generally the case that at least one of the ingredients is in very, very short, rare, limited supply. And that's going to be the limiting factor in however big the batch is. So batches will be of different sizes and highly limited releases, particularly as we're using rare inputs, which a normal company might just create, put out a 10-year-old Indian single malt as a standalone product. It's a phenomenal standalone product, but I think it really also contributes um, to blends in a way that other whiskeys don't. So
Sure.
expect the legacy to come out once a year in limited supply. Um, and then Explorer will always be on the shelf. Uh, there will probably be a time in the not too distant future where you'll generally see 2 or 3 different Explorers on the shelf simultaneously, kind of cycling through. And then the last product family, the sort of everyday drinker at a lower approachable proof around that $45-$50 price point, featuring full flavored whiskey grains. That will also be a standard expression that will be consistent over time and available.
And this legacy
All right.
or this Explorer is $69.99. Is that right?
Yeah, $69.99.
Okay.
Yeah, so still a little more
That's the
attainable.
MSRP.
Yeah, so a little more attainable than
Yeah.
the $200 for the legacy, but I mean, you get what you're paying for, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're paying for a blend of 10, 11, and 18 year.
Well,
So
well, go ahead.
I was gonna say we changed up because we all got through our Los Calaveras, and we're smoking one that's a traditional favorite for us here. It's the knuckle sandwich Maduro from Espinosa. And Ari, I don't know if you're much of a cigar guy or if you know much about cigars. Have you heard of the knuckle sandwich before?
I've not heard of the knuckle. It's a great name.
Yes, it is. And the unique thing about this, there was a gentleman, a celebrity, who went after Espinosa for almost 2 years trying to do a collaboration, Guy Fieri. And Guy is a big-time cigar smoker. And he just hounded him because he really liked Espinosa cigars and said, I really want to do a collaboration with you and put my name on it. And this isn't going to be just put my name on something, right? Much like what you talked about, how Eric is involved in and cares about, the product from a story perspective and what's being created. Guy is the same way with this. I think that this absolutely went perfect with that legacy. It brought out some really unique notes.
I'm back with the Explorer now with this too, and it's doing a totally different thing with the pairing than the other cigar did, which comes back to what Will was saying with a Maduro. This actually really does pop even more, even though this is a Maduro, a Sumatra Maduro. I would think maybe like a San Andreas or something like that would make it even more chocolatey and more sweet. This one's bringing out a little bit more spice, which I like.
I was gonna say, like, you know what it reminds me of? I get these dried mangoes covered with like tahini or chili.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it reminds me of. Like the pairing between the two. It's that sweet, salty fruit.
Well,
so good.
Well, you ever want to get a couple, pretty famous guys together to do kind of a cigar and whiskey, thing here? These knuckle sandwiches, they are extremely well known. I mean, there is Rob? Is there at least 8 to 10 different variations on the knuckle sandwich?
There's a few.
Yeah, there's
so it's really, really incredible. To see people that have something else that is their primary profession get into this from a what I would call a culinary perspective, right? Where it's not George Clooney slapping his name on a bottle of tequila, right? That's fine. That's great. I'm sure it sells tequila. That's awesome. But when you get somebody who's really passionate about something besides their primary gig and they have the means to do it and to go after it and to support it, you can actually get some pretty special stuff. And I think that, having this whiskey today, having this cigar really shows that to be the case. It'll be interesting to see how these collaborations continue to evolve and create new amazing products to come out on the market.
Yeah. Well, and something, that we've talked about a lot amongst ourselves that I think is pretty exciting. Everyone's always looking to see what's next. What's the next big thing in every aspect of life? And I feel like with people like you guys, with Barrel Craft Spirits, even Penelope, even though I know they use mainly just MGP, but they're becoming amazing blenders. And I feel like now that we're getting into that world where people don't look at blending as a bad thing, or don't look at the grain forwardness we talk about as a bad thing. People start realizing, okay, this is a world where we can actually expand into new areas, new flavor profiles, and all that stuff. And the true whiskey lover is going to come into this going, this just opened my world up even more, and there's no end in sight to where we can go with this. So I love seeing more people blending and realizing something totally new and totally special, even though it's still in that whiskey world.
And finishing too.
And finishing, all that stuff.
I mean, the fact
really
that there's not distillers, they're whiskey makers, but all they're doing is finishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
You know who's saying the bourbon boom's over? This is the Big Six.
Yeah.
It's not craft distillers
No.
and craft distilleries that are doing things like this, that are coming out, you know, with new products, you know, monthly, weekly, yearly, that are kind of changing the game again.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's a
Well,
different boom coming, and
a lot of
it's not
that-
distillation.
A lot of that really did kind of come in with craft breweries too. Back in the day, you know, craft breweries came in, and you had all the basic beers out there, the domestics, and everyone's going, "Oh, what's this new thing?" And everybody jumped into it. Everybody loved it. And I
Barrel
feel
aged.
yeah, all the different things. It's like, you know, you get to that level. Obviously, like you were talking about with Jim Beam, you know, they have to create a product that is very consistent.
It's international.
Yeah, they can
Yeah.
play with some things, but when you get into people that actually using the craft and figuring out, you know, getting a culinary person involved that's actually a part of that, or getting a blender involved or whatever, people have their roles, but you start blending those all together. Now all of a sudden you create new categories and all that I think is going to take whiskey to a whole new world, which I'm super excited about.
A whole new
Whole
world.
new world.
Yeah, hey, as soon as you have a graduated cylinder, you can be part of it,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
innovation yourself.
Yeah.
Right? The innovation's not just what's in the bottle, it's the invitation for you to be creative using your back bar.
Yeah.
For sure.
Your back bar, that's not just all of your products there that you can offer. Those are now paints, right, on your palette that you
I
can
like
begin
that.
blending together in new ways.
Will, what were you going
like
to
that
say?
a lot.
I saw you leaning in.
Oh no, I was just was talking about, you know, when you look at craft distilling or craft brewing, like craft brewing had an instant impact, right? I mean, you don't have to wait, you know.
Mhm.
With craft distilling, we're just now starting to see a lot of these guys coming out with aged products that they're selling that they didn't source, that are just great. And I think I don't, and I'm just curious what everybody thinks here. I don't think we've seen the full effect of craft distilling on the market in the U.S. yet. Like it's here, but I think there's still better to come that we haven't even touched on yet. And I think we're just starting to see that now.
Well, we've talked with distillers. We've talked with plenty of them that either they're shipping MGP right now. Some of them they're coming up against the strain and saying, okay, I'm going to ship a 3-year or a 4-year product, occasionally a 2-year product. But we know that as long as they can sustain the weight, there's going to continue to be better and better and more unique stuff out there. And then when you talk about this potential for blending,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, if I'm one of these guys that I've got a lot of inventory that's sitting at 2 and 3 years, I'm probably thinking, I should be thinking, how much of this could I potentially sell as outright barrels to somebody that wants to do blending and take my product and create some, I mean, I'm still selling the whiskey,
Yeah.
right? So I'm still able to create my distilled product that I can sell in some sort of fashion, right? Maybe the distribution isn't as wide as I'd like it initially, but this is a hard business to get into. It's very challenging because of that weight. You have to have some significant financial resources to be able to do it and to do it right. So if you've now got some level of, you know, connecting with other companies and doing B2B type sales for the purpose of blending, now your marketplace, you've got, you know, potentially contract sales. You've got ways to sustain your business to then put out your distilled product that could be unique while also offering it as part of a blended product for somebody else.
Yeah, now you're starting to see contract distillation between craft distilleries.
Yeah.
Instead of just contracting to, you know, larger contracts, you're getting the smaller guys involved with, you know, helping
Because somebody's
the new
got larger
community out.
capacity, right?
Right,
They've got
yeah.
the ability to distill
Right.
a much more significant amount. Maybe they don't because they don't have the rickhouse capacity,
Sure.
right? But now if they can run that still, you know, 12, 14, 24 hours a day because they've got a larger operation, they're making money, and suddenly it's building this marketplace up as a whole. I think at the end of the day, the consumers win, right?
Sure.
Because we're all able to experience these new and unique flavors and go out and realize, hey, the bottles that I chased after for 2 or 3 years because I was new to whiskey, suddenly I'm looking at it and going, man, there's other good shit out there, and I need to be getting out there and finding out about it.
That's true.
Yeah.
The biggest change that I've seen in the past couple of years, particularly for small brands that are pushing innovations in style or quality or concepts, is the ability to sell direct to consumer. There has not, in my opinion, been an innovation in the spirits industry that has allowed consumers to find brands that they love or brands to find their target consumer without having to focus on a specific political geography like a state, which is kind of a weird thing. Distribution for 90 years was dependent on small brands finding the 5 states that they could go into and hopefully finding their customers in those 5 states. Direct to consumer has turned that on its head entirely. There are a lot of brands that no longer do traditional distribution because it's inefficient. Distributors take a sizable cut, even potentially retailers take a sizable cut, which makes sense in one specific model. But there's a reason why Nike doesn't sell its shoes on Amazon. You either go to the store or you go to Nike.com. And I think direct to consumer is kind of very similar in that it allows smaller niche innovative brands to find their customers, whether they're in the state of New York or Topeka, Kansas or Alaska or wherever. It's just I haven't seen from a distribution point of view a game changer quite like being able to set up an e-commerce store and find your customer in wherever they may live.
Well, distribution's meant for a purpose, right? It's once you potentially have a marketplace that you can get into to get it to a wide area, right? Versus a direct where it's all word of mouth. When you suddenly find out that, hey, I'm selling X number of bottles to this state, obviously this fits a geographical palette. Now suddenly I go, okay, who is distributing there that can get me into stores where, somebody saw it at their buddies, they don't remember what it was. Now they see it on the shelf and they go, oh yeah, I'm going to grab a bottle of that, right? There's a purpose there at every single level, depending on how large you're trying to go and how wide you're trying to be. I think that there's a lot of, growth opportunities there going from one level to the next, because direct market to the entire world is challenging, right? I mean, I've been involved in audio production stuff, and you look at a company like Carvin, who they only do mail order stuff, right? Lots of people bag them because they're not happy with them as the quality of product. For those aren't audio people, but they've sold a lot of direct to market with what they do. Others have done that initially and then gone to a distribution model. So I think there's steps within the process that get you everywhere that you need to be.
Well, and I feel like,
Go
ahead.
I was just going to say you're absolutely right. I don't think that direct consumer offers the scale that traditional distribution does, but direct consumer, what I think folks are finding is it can help inform those distribution decisions so that you're ending up in the right markets when it's time to make the investment in conventional distribution.
Well, and I feel like it also, direct to consumer also does something at a larger scale that a tasting room might do for a distillery, that all of a sudden now you can create brand loyalty because someone comes out and buys a bottle from you, and then they're like, I love this bottle, but I can't buy it at my local liquor store. I can go online and buy it, and they continue to buy your new products because they're now loyal to something that they've discovered or that they've fallen in love with, and they can actually continue that brand loyalty in that, where, a lot of the brands you can't do that with. You really, it's kind of hard to say, oh, I found this amazing whiskey from Arizona, can't buy it here. And next time I'm in Arizona, I'll get a bottle, but now you actually can create that. And I think that's pretty awesome.
So I want to address this kind of from a different viewpoint. There was some news here recently. I don't know if you guys heard about it, but there was a court case in the state of Texas. And I think it was a federal court in Texas that nullified the rules prohibiting home distilling. And
The Chevron case.
the Chevron was used as the leverage for it, but then they came back and they said, okay, because of the Chevron case, and this was they only stayed the decision for 10 days to allow the federal government to appeal. I don't know if they have, but they said the government does not have the right to dictate when it's not being sold, and especially when it's not being sold across state lines. They can't stop you from doing home distilling.
Yeah.
When you start looking at that and you look at what, in the brewers market, because home brewing was a thing, when craft brewing started to grow, a lot of the craft brewers that came onto the marketplace, successful or otherwise, right, local or highly distributed, they came from a home brewing background. They started getting into competitions, state fairs or local competitions, and they started winning medals, and they said, okay, I'm going to open up a brewery, which obviously does now require licensing and, a lot of investment, and it's a bigger thing, but they started there. When we start looking at these craft distillers and you think, okay, even now, if you want to get into craft distilling, you're talking about having to sell a product and make enough money to cover your costs to do that initial build out. And whether you start with vodka or gins because they're immediate turnarounds versus going into whiskey, what happens when you suddenly have home distillers that are just giving it away and everybody starts saying, man, I really like that whiskey that he has, or I really like whatever his distilled product is. I mean, we could just be on the very edge of starting a brand new boom because of the potential to open up home distilling just for recreation.
Well, and right after that whatever that law was or whatever they were trying to do there in Texas, many states, even some of the ones around here, and I'm pretty sure Indiana was on board with this too, have already started writing up some laws to try to get them passed to open up home distilling. And it is the next thing. It's like once one goes through, it's going to be a landslide of states saying, let's do this.
Yeah, I mean, that's been over 200 years.
Yeah,
it's about time. You have not been able to home distill, right? I mean, it's
about time.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see, I agree with you, Will, that I don't think this boom has even started yet. Mm-hmm. I think we're just getting
as someone that does home brewing and home winemaking as well, as a professional, I should point out that distilling is different than winemaking and brewing.
And can be dangerous.
If there were a fire, you can put it out with beer and wine, and you cannot put it out with whiskey.
Right.
So there are some differences, and I certainly I don't necessarily think the government should be regulating whether people make whiskey or not. But I do think that folks that are interested in such a thing really need to do their due diligence in terms of understanding what the flash points are of alcohol at different proofs and ambient temperatures. There's some very basic health and safety things that I certainly hope people take into consideration.
I mean, look,
spirits are very different than beer.
The home meth market has obviously shown us that there's a lot of danger out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to need more fire departments.
Right. The taxes are going to go up just to cover all that.
But I do feel like that if you start opening up the ability to do it, that's where it can be regulated to make sure that the right regulations are in place so the safety factors hit. Maybe you have to take a specific course to learn how to do this. You can't just start making stuff in your backyard. Whatever that looks like, it's still ability to start regulating it once you legalize it.
They're going to add a new line in your disclosures for your home sale. Do you home distill?
It could be home insurance, right?
The other good thing too is like with the Chevron ruling kind of dropping down too, it now will become the right people, the people that understand the process are going to be the ones creating those regulations. It's not going to be the government that doesn't understand it. And that's going to be nice if they can actually do that and make it, the right way, make it a safe thing for people to do at home.
Great. Now I got to look out for the HOA that says no home distilling allowed. Thanks a lot.
What were the 8 most dangerous words ever said in American history? I'm the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, heck yeah. Ari, you got anything else for us? We appreciate you.
We've held you on a little long, so.
Yeah, we appreciate the information. Anything else you want to share about Whiskey Jypsi or any other little tidbits or history?
I'm happy to hang out for as long as you like.
Okay.
This is it's a joy to be able to get to talk about this with with you. This is such a fantastic company, um, innovating on all these different fronts that we just described. Just for starters, there's plenty of other projects we have on our back burner that we look forward to pulling out at some point. But
Well, tell us about every one of them in detail.
right.
I will say, so Ari, I had not heard of Whiskey Jypsi at all, and that's just, it's a big world and it's a big marketplace, and so I feel like I'm learning all the time. I mean, I've been drinking bourbon forever, and it's just so much changing. I can't say thank you enough for coming on the show today and sharing the story and the background, obviously sharing the product. I'd highly encourage anybody that is listening, go out and check out Whiskey Jypsi, go to the website. I don't know, is this available in Indiana as far as being distributed?
Not yet.
Not yet. So we
Not
can't
quite
have it
there
on the
yet.
back bar yet.
Soon. Yeah. In the
Soon,
meantime,
soon.
it's on the website.
Hey, I want to
and
drink
we
it at
can
the
deliver
lounge,
to
Ari. I can't drink it at the lounge, man.
Soon.
We'll get there.
Yeah, this definitely would be one.
Oh, it'd be awesome.
Yeah,
100%.
worthwhile to add to the back bar and promote here locally, because I've just been as much impressed with how well it goes with the cigars.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
And we find all the time that there's some bourbons and ryes and so on that, they don't quite pair as well as you'd like, but man, this one really hit all the marks today.
Absolutely.
Well,
I think when you go to the website and see some of the videos, there'll be a lot of footage of Eric and Raj and I around a campfire, drinking whiskey and smoking cigars. It's
Nice.
something we really enjoy doing when we get together.
Yeah.
And it's like peanut butter and jelly as whiskey and cigars.
Yeah.
And you're in Detroit, right?
That's right.
So it's just so you know, it's a short 5-hour drive. You can get right down here. You guys come on into the lounge. We'll hang out. It'll be a great time.
I got a spare room.
That's right.
Mike has a spare room.
I got a spare room.
I'm gonna have to take you up on that. Thank
I
you for the
totally
offer.
missed that. You're in Detroit?
Yeah.
Well,
he's
I'm
in
in Ann
Detroit.
Arbor, so I'm
Oh.
on the outskirts of Detroit in Ann Arbor.
Oh, my
Michigan.
bad. I thought you were in Nashville. My bad. The brand's
The
in
brand
Nashville.
is in Nashville,
I
yeah.
got you. Okay. I understand.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, what?
Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, Ari may know Sin Coburn. She's a cigar owner for Dissident Cigars, and she's got a friend who does distilling in Detroit, right, guys? That they did a private
Oh, yeah.
label for her cigar, yeah.
Yeah.
That
it's
Dissident Bourbon.
Dissident Bourbon. Yeah.
It was
I'm
a
not-
brewery.
Yeah.
It was a brewery in Detroit.
Yeah.
Let me look that up. I don't remember the name of the brewery.
I can't remember the name. Yeah.
But they're in Detroit, right? Like in Detroit.
Yeah, they are. I
City
believe.
limits.
Probably, yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was good stuff. But they did that private label for Dissident Cigars, and it was the Dissident Bourbon. We had Sin on the show. She was absolutely fantastic. One of the kindest people that you'll ever meet, and
Funny as hell.
oh my goodness, I couldn't stop laughing with her. But
It's,
she lives in Nicaragua now, right? Is
Yeah,
that
she's in
right?
Nicaragua
Yes,
now.
that's where she lives.
So the guy's name is Robert Claddy. He's master distiller and owner of Tenacity Craft in Detroit. That sound familiar?
I am gonna have to meet. No, I
Yeah,
don't know
look
Robert.
Look that up.
Interestingly, I'm gonna have to meet him.
It's Klaty is his last name. The place is called Tenacity Craft.
Now, I believe they're a very, very small distillery. They obviously couldn't make a bunch for her to distribute. It was more of, if you do an event, you can get a bottle with your event to share with people. It wasn't one I could buy and put on the bar. So I'm pretty sure they're fairly small.
Yeah, I don't think the Dissonant was even available at the distillery.
It's
I think
not.
it
No,
was,
it's
it was
It's
only done
cigar
just
release
for Dissonant.
only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she talked about, she's from Detroit, and I think specifically Flint. So she was on the show a month or so ago, and we were joking around because it was really good bourbon to come from a brewer, which is more and more popular nowadays, that the brewers are jumping ship to go to distilling, adding that extra step. But I was cracking jokes at her because I asked her like what made that whiskey so special, and I kind of threw her some shade, and I was like, "Oh, is it the water from Flint that made it so special?" It's like, and then I thought about it, and I was like, "Shit, I didn't mean it like that."
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
It is not. It is not Flint water. It might be. It's just like quadruple filtered, and
Yeah.
there's no bioorganisms in it, or
Lead.
I'm gonna check it out. I love learning about, even in a state like Michigan,
Yeah.
you can't know all of the distillers at the same time because there's so many of them, which is fantastic.
We'll try to get you a sample of that, or get you a bottle of that. Maybe we'll reach out to Sin and see if we can get you
I've
some
got
of
a
that.
bottle in the back. We can get a sample together and send up to you.
Yeah, so we'll get you a sample. You bring us a book and some beakers, and we will trade you a sample of Dissident bourbon.
It's a deal.
So when you go down to Nashville, do you fly or do you just drive?
I usually fly to Nashville.
Okay, I was gonna say
I drive to Louisville and I fly to Nashville.
Okay.
5 hours is kind of the cutting point for me.
I got you.
Usually.
So if you're ever driving down to Louisville, hit us up. We're probably, I don't know, about halfway for you. We're just outside of Indianapolis, so if you want to ever stop by and hang out with us, we'd love to hang out and do this together.
This is what we do.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is our normal.
Thank you for the invitation. I will take you up on that.
Yeah, that'd be
Absolutely.
awesome. Yeah.
Will, you got any other questions or any other comments for Ari here?
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm just curious. Beer finishes. Like, have you ever played around with finishing in beer barrels, and do you like that process? Is it do you feel like, I mean, because I've had some that I think are good. I've had some that I think are just not that great. And are there, some of the challenges that you deal with dealing with beer, trying to finish with a beer barrel or something?
I love collaborating with winemakers and brewers. And there are a couple of complications here. So the first one is you have to make sure it's a beer that has the right level of sugars and acids, because it's very easy for a whiskey to become sour in a negative way if the acids are off in the beer. However, stouts, double stouts, chocolate stouts, usually richer, more robust, sweet flavors, I think play really great with bourbon oftentimes. You never know how much residual sugar is going to be inside of a barrel. So when I finish bourbon in the barrel, oftentimes I assume that I'm going to blend that with unfinished bourbon, just in case it's too much of that chocolatey stoutiness coming through. And then that's from a stylistic point of view. And then from just a purely logistics, brass tacks point of view, it's really important to get whiskey in beer barrels as quickly as possible after those beer barrels have been harvested, because they're sitting ducks to contamination.
Yeah.
Acetobacter and other kinds of contaminants can get in there so quickly. So in general, when I work with breweries or do small scale whiskey collaborations, I want maximum of a 48-hour turnaround after harvesting the beer barrel before getting the whiskey in it. If it's longer than that, if it's 72 hours even, you're exposing tens of thousands of dollars of product, potentially negative issues.
And vice versa on that too. The brewers want to get that within about 48 hours after a whiskey barrel for the same reasons. Because we have a local craft brewer. His name's Colt Carpenter with Pax Verum.
Shout out.
He's always trying to get those unique barrels, but it's when it's dumped, he's wanting to go get those barrels immediately so he can get process started. And I'm assuming it's probably even more so important on the flip side, going from beer to whiskey, than it is going from whiskey to beer.
Yeah, I mean, both ways really, because by the time you harvest a whiskey barrel, the alcohol content is so low at that point that it, again, is no longer fortified. It is susceptible to contamination.
Yeah.
And it's really a sitting duck. So unless you're going to fill it with an inert gas, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, sometimes it evaporates out through the pores in the wood. Best thing to do is just get it to where it needs to go as quickly as possible and make sure that you have direct freight trucks. And it's a great question about collaborations in general and all of the planning that is involved in collaborating with breweries and wineries. Yeah,
we like Dragon's Milk Origin. That one was pretty good. That was a good collab.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that one was great. And a fairly inexpensive bottle too.
Yeah.
I think the price on that one was like 65, 69
Something
maybe.
like that.
Yeah.
The cask was a little higher, but not much. Yeah.
But that was a good collab between, a beer and distillate brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's New Holland, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
New Holland.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Are my neighbors here in Michigan? And,
Yep.
Yep.
it's New Holland brewing and distilling, so that all happens within the very same warehouse. They're able to control that process, and I think the quality of that bourbon has something to do with the fact that they do it all in house, and there's none of these
Yep.
logistical issues.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't remember. I think it was like 36 hours. Like it's on site, like you said, but I think within 36 hours they're processing the next batch. So
Yeah.
it's relatively quick to get that into the barrel. So it's pretty
deal.
cool.
Good deal.
Yeah, I like all that. So you got anything else, Will? What you got?
No, man, that's really it. I just
Cool.
want to thank Ari for coming on, man. It's just so educational and informative, and you guys are blending great whiskey. It's a great. I mean, I love the Explorer. It's the first time I tried it was today, and I'm definitely going to go grab a bottle. It's really good. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to go over my time just a little bit so that we could
Oh no,
keep
this
the
is
conversation going. I
perfect. No,
appreciate
this is
that.
great.
Yeah, it's all good,
Yeah.
brother. You got any final thoughts or anything for us?
No, just keep up the great work. It's a pleasure talking with you guys. I hope we have a chance to do it again soon, and I hope we have a chance to do it in person.
Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can follow along the journey, especially on things like, where they're going to be able to start getting your whiskey shipped to our state and other states.
Follow Whiskey Jypsi on all the socials.
Okay.
Facebook, Instagram, the TikTok, all of those, even YouTube. The team is phenomenal about getting information, really high quality production value information out to the Whiskey Jypsi fan base.
Okay.
And whiskeygypsy.com is the best place to go to learn more about the brand and
Awesome.
to purchase bottles.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ari.
And I will
Appreciate it.
tell everybody, Jypsi is spelled Jypsi. So make sure you spell that correctly when you're looking for it too.
Yep.
So
Yep.
awesome, man. Well, thanks a lot. We really appreciate you coming on. It was a really good time.
Likewise, thanks again for having me.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Looking forward
Thanks,
to talking
guys.
to you again
Cheers.
soon.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Have a good
buddy.
one.
See ya.
Cheers.
Guys, I know we probably have some last minute business here, some upcoming things. There's some events going on here in a couple weeks. Rob, fill us in. I know there's a couple of them.
The big one coming up, we have a event with Heaven Hill, releasing the Grain to Glass series. Or is that what it is?
Yep, Grain to Glass.
Grain to Glass.
I always forget that one. But yeah, they're coming out here.
Soil
August the
to
3rd.
palate.
Soil to palate. Soil to the toilet. No, no. Grain to Glass series. It's going to be August the 3rd. Out here, it's going to be an all-day thing. There's going to be food. There's going to be tastings, all kinds of great stuff.
Jim
So,
Romanek himself will be here.
Jim will be here, so we're excited about that. That's the big one coming up. We'll be promoting some other things too as we get closer to that too. We have a Drew Estate cut and light coming up
August
in August
7th.
as well. So August the 7th.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that.
This episode is going to drop on the 29th, right?
I think so.
Okay.
Excellent. So if you're listening
Yes.
to this on the 29th, remember at Final Third Cigar and Whiskey Lounge, July 31st is Ladies' Night.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to feature some massages, massage chair, and essential oil table.
It's not by Rob.
That's been postponed.
Oh, it's been postponed?
The massage part and everything's been postponed. Lisa's not going to be here.
Oh, okay. But it is
So,
still Ladies' Night, right?
It's still Ladies' Night. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Every
So we will be
Wednesday,
doing
right?
more of that, yeah.
Is every Wednesday?
Every Wednesday's Ladies'
Every
Night.
Wednesday
Wait,
is
was
Ladies'
Lisa
Night.
doing the massages?
No, but
Oh, okay.
But she didn't want him here if she can't get a massage. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Will's got to be
When
here
are-
so he can
when
get
are-
his massage.
When are we doing our pedicure episode? We
Ooh.
still have
I'm
a couple
due.
of weeks of summer left.
I'm
right?
due
We need to
for
get it-
sure.
I'm due
Yeah.
right now, man.
Yeah, I got a wicked tore up big toenail here that needs some attention.
All right.
Hey,
Got all
you know,
hammer
it's
toe
summer.
over
I've
here.
been, me, I'm always no shirt and no shoes, and I don't walk so well.
We're
you know,
stifling
so-
Scotty's creativeness over here. He's got a
Yes.
shirt on and shoes.
I know it's terrible.
God, that
it's
sucks.
terrible. But we had to be inside. We were doing Zoom today. August 7th. Is that still
That's,
going
yep,
on?
that's the cut and light one.
cut
Yep.
The
Light.
cut and light with Drew Estate.
Yep.
So make sure and be here for that event. And
We will teach you how to cut and light your cigar the right way.
Yeah.
Yep. And then of course the new Las Calaveras, which we smoked today.
Yep.
Boy, that's such a great cigar.
It is.
Right out of the box, too.
Yeah. That's one that I'm kind of like, my humidor is starting to get a little low. I might
Grab a
have to look
box
into
of
a
'em.
box of those. it's that good.
Well, and just so you guys all know, we still have some of the last 2 years. So we've got 3 years in a row. So I'm going to put together a sample pack where you can buy one from each of the 3 years, and then you'll get another cigar as well for free.
And let's talk about that real quick, because you've been putting these sample packs together. Yeah. And I think people are kind of glossing over them. Just, they come in, they're buying one cigar. They got the cigars that they typically like.
Yeah.
But you're not putting these things together just willy-nilly. You're putting them together with a purpose.
Yeah, so we went through the first batch of them, and they went really well. I've got a second batch out in there right now, which is a lot of the Oveja Negra cigars, which is Dissident line, as well as the Black Works and Black Label. Those are all going to be more medium-bodied cigars in one pack. We'll be doing the Las Calaveras pack, but I usually, when I do these, you're usually going to get like 20 to 30, maybe even more % off by buying that way. It's more of to give you an opportunity to try a few different cigars, either from the same brand or from different brands in a similar profile.
I need to start buying some of those. I haven't bought one from you yet.
They're great, man. It's a great way to get a few cigars to try different brands maybe that you haven't tried, and get a heck of a discount on them too.
Well, obviously, if you come into Final Third and you see those sample packs there, ask anybody that's here. They can give you some detail on, why that sample pack was put together. Mm-hmm. And you never know, you'll be able to find something new. You'll be able to find it at a great price.
Yep.
Compared to just picking them off the shelf. So make sure and check out the sample packs.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we had a great time talking with Ari. That was super informative.
He is awesome.
I've got so they actually use they have like a publicist company, I guess, that like handles most of their stuff. So the guy that I dealt with was not Ari directly. It was a fellow named Ed. I don't remember his last name.
Shout out Ed.
Shout out Ed. Thank you for hooking us up. I don't even remember. I think Logan Bearded Bourbon. Logan Everett. He sent me a picture of this bottle, and I was like, dude, that's like a $200 bottle. He was like, this is really good. You got to try it. And I was like, I've never seen that before. I've never heard of it. He was like, email this guy. And he gave me Ed's email, and I emailed him, and like I was like, no way this dude is answering my email. It's like, this is Eric Church's brand. It's like, no way. And then he was
right on it.
Yeah, right on it. Super cool. And like within a week, like hooked us up with the product, and they're just trying to get out there and get their name known.
Well, and it's not Eric Church's brand like he put his name on it.
Right.
It's Eric Church's brand like he has got a heavily vested interest.
He's actively involved with the brand.
He's a partner.
Yeah, and I love
that.
We talked about it, obviously, but I love that.
I look at Ari's role kind of like, Ari is their Alan Bishop.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Yeah. That's Ari's role. Ari in the blending world is the Alan Bishop, in my opinion, in the distilling world. Like he has all this knowledge bank, and he has all this travel experience. He knows where he wants to source whiskey from. He knows how he wants to blend it. I just super impressed with that guy. He's really good at what he does.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
awesome.
It was great, connecting with him, and like, he's got to have ownership in this too, right? Because like the way that he talks about this is he's super proud of everything that he's doing and the brand is doing. And if you read that little printout that I gave you, Will, did you read through that at all?
No.
No, well, you'll have to read that because I'm part of that.
Dog ate my homework.
Well, on part of that, it just goes into detail about he just had like free range to do like whatever he wanted to do to make the best whiskey possible.
Yeah.
And as soon as I read that, I was like, I had the same thought. I was like, it's Alan Bishop for sure. Like, kid in a candy store. Like, what did he do? He got 18-year product from India and then some stuff from Canada. Like, that's insane. Like, I wouldn't have thought
it's a common. You see this though. It's a common theme where these people are successful. You give these super smart, talented, and credibly, talented individuals with a creative, open platform to do what they want to do. And is everything going to be a home run? Of course not. But like when they hit, they're going to be very special. And I think that's the key. So I love seeing people that are so creative have a opportunity to like showcase their talents and what they can do.
So speaking of creativity, Will, you've been out in LA for like 3 days now. So are you getting headshots? You got an audition lined up?
When's your debut?
There are literally physicist headshots available in the
Nice.
convention center. This place is
Headshots.
like being on a different planet. I'll tell you that right now.
It's a different country out there.
First couple days, not impressed, but I tell you what, finding that cigar lounge and finding the bourbon bar is called 7 Grand. So if anybody's in LA, downtown LA, hit 7 Grand on Olive Street. It's phenomenal.
So that's fun. Where was this cigar lounge you found then?
So it's a speakeasy inside of the actual bourbon lounge.
Okay.
You have to ring a doorbell to get to the back of it, and it's open air. So it's got a roof, but it's got open windows, and so you can literally sit down in there, order cocktails. They have a full bourbon bar, and the bourbon bar and the speakeasy is all high allocated stuff. Like, you can imagine a highly allocated bottle from the Wellers and the Pappies and all the BTACs. And I pulled out a Russell's 15 they had just gotten, and we sipped on that. The interesting thing was, I was briefly mentioning the 2 gentlemen that I enjoyed the cigar and the whiskey with. Alex, the crypto guy, he came in with a travel case that he brought in. And we were talking. He's like, "So what do you like to smoke?" I'm like, "Well, I'll be honest. I really, I'm a big, fan of Espinosa, Aladino." I said, "But knuckle sandwich is probably my go-to." I said, "What about you?" And he's like, "I only smoke Cubans." And I go, "Oh
Yep.
shit,
Here we go.
We got a knucklehead here." And but we talked about it more, and I said, "So what is your issue with not smoking? I mean, you understand there's a lot of great Nicaraguan blends out there, and why are you stuck on Cubans?" He said, "It's very simple." He said, "I grew up smoking Cubans." He said, "I've been smoking Cubans since I was 16." He said, "And honestly, I can buy these Cubans and get them shipped to me a hell of a lot cheaper than I can buying cigars that are American cigars through American distribution and having to pay the California sales tax or the California tobacco tax on it." I mean, the tax he's paying on those makes it so that in his head, he's paying less for Cubans essentially.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
Which I think's nuts. And I said, "Well, I understand your economics there, but just let you know, you're missing out on some good cigars."
Well,
Yeah.
factory smokes are also cheaper too, but that doesn't make them good.
Very true. Very true. But again, fun place to hang out. I'm going out with some guys tonight to the Dodgers Giants game. So I've
Let's
never been
go
to Dodger
Dodgers.
Stadium, so that'll be fun.
Let's go Dodgers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
watch
I'm glad you had a better experience than I did, because when we went there, I went there with the military and we were filming, and we wanted to go get food. We stayed at some shitty hotel across from the airport, and I don't even remember the name of the place we went to, but it was right downtown too. We thought we were going to get some barbecue. We walk in there, and it is this heavily urban strip club that sold barbecue. And yeah, we got some looks, and we didn't end up staying for dinner.
because that's exactly what I want with my bare-chested women is barbecue.
I mean, you don't really go for the buffet. So, but we did the same thing, man. Like we hit up a Dodgers game, and I don't know if he's still on the team. His name was Will Smith. He was a first baseman for the University of Louisville 4 or 5 years ago. So it's like really cool to like see some of these players that I've filmed in college, moving up to the pros. So I'm not invested into baseball at all, but it was cool to go. That's an awesome stadium. Like, it's inside is really nice. You look on the outside, it's not in a great area. There's not a whole lot of LA that's really,
Great areas.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time at Watts Tower and some of like the sketchier part of towns, but
I'm not gonna lie, I'm definitely ready to be home.
for sure.
Today's kind of weird because today's my birthday, so I turned 50 today.
Happy birthday,
birthday, buddy.
I'd much rather, thank you. Yeah, I'd much rather be home with my wife and hanging with my kids tonight than being here in LA. And but we'll be back. We fly back in 2 days. So actually, my youngest daughter's out here with me visiting
nice.
with some friends she made. So
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Well, happy
deal.
birthday, man. I know
Yeah.
we probably haven't told you that yet already today, but happy birthday officially.
Thanks. Yeah, this was a highlight of my day so far. Getting to hang with you guys and sip some great damn whiskey and pick Ari's brain about everything. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Heck yeah. Well, you have fun at the Dodgers game.
Yeah.
Don't get shanked in the parking lot.
I'll try not.
Yep, that's a good one to
Well,
avoid.
heck yeah. Well, let's move on, man. I know we got other stuff going on today, so we'll move on. Will, where can they find you at, brother?
You can find me at Cocky Wolverine.
Heck yeah.
You can find me everywhere. Final Third Cigar.
You can find me at Scotty D Smokes. Thanks. I've had a few more followers over the last week or two, so thanks for that.
Nice.
Heck yeah. You can find me at Both Their Visuals, Spencer Lee's, and don't forget to follow the Final Third Podcast Instagram page for all of your content from the podcast. Check out the website. Rob already said it, finalthirdcigar.com.
Yep.
We'll be posting more content, like Rob said, about purely informative stuff with cigars and whiskey. So stay tuned. Be sure to like and subscribe. And cheers. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.
See you guys.